how do you set goals? Like for me, I set goals of like, okay, I want to see where I can be in 5, 10, 20 years. Not like, how do I make $1,000 today? People now see it. So XXII was one the other day where lower nicotine cigarettes are becoming in demand. And there was a press release, and then Bloomberg, I think, wrote about it the next day, and then Seeking Alpha wrote about it the next day after that. So you had multiple days, multiple news outlets. So I like to think like that. It's not an exact science holding overnight. You know, you might buy an earnings winner, and then an analyst might downgrade the stock the next day. So you're trying to get the odds on your side, and then if you are buying a stock overnight and it doesn't gap up, you simply exit. You don't hold and hope. A lot of people don't get what they want right away, and they're like, well, let me just give it more time. Yeah. What do you think about holding and hoping?
Terrible. I mean, yeah, like you were saying, and I will say this also about the holding overnight. I prefer doing it with OTC stocks. I think that it's a lot higher odds when you see an OTC, especially if it's been breaking out like you were just talking about. I think it's much higher odds that the OTC keeps on gapping up and maybe has another strong day.
It's funny how that works. OTCs, they're the worst companies out there. They're junk, but
they're very technically pure.
But they move like so based on momentum, because they have like one product and the momentum's either with it or without it.
Yeah.
So it either spikes or crashes. So when the momentum is with it, like it's very slow.
Yeah, and with the listed stocks, I think it's a lot more of a toss-up. And a lot of people will hear, okay, it's a toss-up, and then not want to take the trade. But if you can manage your risk-reward where, you know, your losses are half of what your gains are, well then yeah, 50-50 is well worth taking. But that's the hard part, and I really struggle with it myself, is if the stock is gapping down the next morning instead of gapping up like you expected, you just got to get out. Like, every time I try to hold or give it a chance and hope, oh, maybe it'll go red-green, I mean, first of all, that's a low-odds setup, but, you know, usually I double my loss at least.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, for example, do cut losses quickly, and then the stock goes up, and then they regret cutting losses. You can't regret your discipline, because that's going to save you the majority of the time. Every now and then, a stock will do a low odds setup and go red to green, but I don't feel guilty missing that because I stuck to my discipline. If you lose your discipline, you have nothing. If you just hold every time, you have nothing. Maybe sometimes you'll win, maybe sometimes you'll lose, and that's most traders. And on the whole, most traders lose. And this is another thing with odds, you know, like, okay, we have like 65, 70% winning percentage, but I know some traders where they're like, they think, okay, if you have 50-50 winning percentage, you're failure. But if you control your losses, let's say you lose, you know, $100 50% of the time, and then your wins, you make $500 50% of the time. Your overall wins are more than your losses. So it's not just about your winning percentage if your losses are smaller than your gains. If you control your losses. If you let your losses get out of control, then you're screwed. So that's why I'm so crazy about cutting losses.
Right.